I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
Football fans of the NFL, fans of the AFC East, whatever your team is, welcome to the show. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Larry K. I host this channel. This is Phin-Addict Fury. I'm an avid Miami Dolphins fan, but I broadcast live from Newark, New Jersey every Tuesday, and I'm coming to you right now from Newark, New Jersey. I just wanted to break down a little bit because I'm in the New York, New Jersey area, so I hear so much about the Jets all the time. This is Miami Buffalo week, so we're going up against the Bills. And the Patriots always have been, at least traditionally for most of my life, a force in the NFL. So I figured, hey, why not sit down, do a little discussion on just AFC East teams in general, and maybe I'll follow up and do this again soon. If you guys haven't done so already, man, whether you're a Dolphins fan, whether you're a fan of another team, if you want to help a dude who grinds out and is always hustling to bring content over and over again despite all the other obligations I have, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Takes a millisecond and it really helps. We're in the middle of a subscriber push trying to get to 1,500 subscriptions in the month of October. Go ahead and smash it if you can. Look, we're going to start off close to home, man, with the New York Jets. So here's my take on the Jets so far. There's a lot of talk, a lot of stuff going on about, Zach Wilson, how terrible he is, how, there's no way Saleh can hang on to his job or keep a straight face, continuing to support Zach Wilson. Douglas might be out of his head if he never got another quarterback in here. There's heartbreak, there's hysteria, there's all this stuff going on because Jets fans and Jets Nation truly thought and truly believed that once they got Aaron Rodgers and then you add in Dalvin Cook, you have the defensive rookie of the year, you have the offensive rookie of the year, you have playmakers. The Jets were going into this season thinking, this is a season that's going to be special. This is a season where we may go to a Super Bowl. In fact, we expect to go to the playoffs. We expect to contend for the AFC East, and we think we have a great shot at the Super Bowl. And normally, I would jeer on and mess with Jets fans. I got a lot of friends that are Jet fans. And say, you guys are overhyping yourselves. You're always overhyping yourselves. You're always too hyped. Now, I still kind of think that's true. But what I think doesn't really matter because the NFL and the league itself obviously agreed with Jets fans. The NFL obviously thought, and the networks thought, and everybody thought, that the New York Jets would be that kind of contender. Because if you just look at the schedule that the NFL laid out there, the Jets have a ton of primetime spots, a ton of primetime games. So they thought that the Jets would be that good as well. But then what happens? A couple plays into the season, Aaron Rodgers goes down. Now, that stadium, I only saw it from TV, but judging by my social media, people I know, just seeing it on TV, watching, everybody go up and down to the Meadowlands, to the game, it was definitely like everybody I know who's a big Jets fan was at that game. Everybody, that was a hyped game for them. And to see him go down, I honestly do feel for you guys. I honestly feel for you, that he went down like that. That's tough to swallow for anybody. But here's my thing. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Dolphins fan, this and that, I'm a hater, whatever. I'm not. I don't know that just because the Jets had Rodgers and those two good, like Garrett Wilson and Sauce, and I know they have Quinnen Williams. I know they have a good. I'm not saying the Jets don't have a pretty solid, good team that would have a winning record for certain with Rodgers. I think they would have a winning record. But I don't know that just because they added Rodgers, they were necessarily a Super Bowl favorite. And I think Jets fans a little bit when they're destroying Zach Wilson. And don't get it twisted. Zach Wilson is not good. He's not the answer for the future. He's definitely holding the team back. The team would definitely be better with a different quarterback, a more competent quarterback than Zach Wilson. That's a given, right? But the offensive line on that team is part of the reason Rodgers got into trouble in the first place. He was a little bit under duress, for each of the first 3 plays where he took a snap. And he was under duress when he went down. Now, the hit isn't what hurt him, but him trying to escape that pressure and maneuver out of it is what hurt him. And in fact, the short pass game that the Jets were trying to run, that Rodgers seemed to want to run himself out of, was a direct game plan because of the O-line not being great. And Rodgers himself was not on his A game last season, and he's getting older, and the Packers were cool to let him go. I wonder, how much of the former, glory days of Aaron Rodgers we were going to see anyway. And the Jets defense, while very good, with a ton of talent on it, has not been infallible, has not been excellent for at least 2 out of the 3 games this season. Now, against the Bills, they were very good. But, Josh Allen is mistake prone, and we'll get to the Bills in a minute. So I guess my overall thoughts and point on the Jets is, and one other thing is Dalvin Cook coming in. And I was somebody, don't get it twisted. I'm not trying to sit here acting like I know everything. Dalvin Cook, I wanted the Dolphins to take Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, by all indications, wanted to go down there, but the Dolphins didn't want to pay him. The Jets were willing to pay him. Dalvin Cook, honestly, he's probably your 3rd best running back on that team right now. I mean, Breece Hall is an excellent player who should be getting almost all the touches. But I forget. But then you got Dalvin Cook hasn't been doing much. Here's my thing with the Jets. It seems like even since the Tannenbaum days, and I'm not completely saying that because obviously Douglas has had a couple good drafts here, a couple good picks. But there's always this, and Tannenbaum did it to us in Miami too with the Ndamukong Suh signing, which never amounted to much, but cost a ton of money, got a ton of fanfare in the offseason. The Jets are like, we're going to get this former, this quarterback who's going to the Hall of Fame, but maybe his best days are behind him. They did it with Brett Favre. It cost them at the end of that season. We're going to get this running back who other teams don't want to pay, but has a big name and has a lot of hype around him. And we're putting a Band-Aid on our own draft mistake in Zach Wilson. And that's going to take all the hype and all the headlines. And that's going to make us Super Bowl favorites overnight. But they're neglecting to address the fact that that's just a Band-Aid. That there's a reason these guys who are future Hall of Famers, well, Rodgers is a future Hall of Famer. Dalvin Cook, who knows? But he was definitely one of the better running backs in the league for a couple of years there. We're getting these guys because we're putting a Band-Aid on our own deficiencies. We're not addressing some of the deficiencies in the offensive line. We're too hyped in some ways about the defense and the way it can play, even though there's some things that can be concerned about there. And we're assuming that a near 40-year-old quarterback is going to make us Super Bowl favorites overnight, and we're going to get super hyped off that. But we made draft mistakes. Zach Wilson was the number 2 overall pick. We made a draft mistake. So I guess my take on the Jets right now is it's a good, solid foundation with young players that are talented. But am I necessarily convinced that Aaron Rodgers is the answer there, or that even if he rehabs his Achilles and comes back next season, that all of a sudden the Jets are now Super Bowl favorites again? We don't even know where Aaron Rodgers' game was before the Achilles injury, let alone after the Achilles injury. If I'm the New York Jets, they can't get out of this Rodgers thing now. And I don't know about how the Cook contract is structured. But there's a real chance, and I know Jets fans don't want to hear this, but there's a real chance that after this next year with Aaron Rodgers turns the page, if Saleh isn't getting it done, you might turn the page on the management, on the coaching, and you might want to draft a quarterback. Now, what if the Jets completely suck this year? Now, it's hard to imagine because the defense and the talent around Wilson is good enough to not be one of the worst 3 teams in the league. So I doubt the Jets are one of the worst 3 teams in the league. But if I was a Jets fan, I'd almost want to be one of the worst 3 teams in the league. Because I'd almost want to have the opportunity to draft a quarterback, let Rodgers play one more year, and then swap out your coaching staff for somebody who believes in the kid you drafted and build on it because you got so many young players. And I don't know that Aaron Rodgers and Dalvin Cook are necessarily the key, the cornerstone that's going to make you a Super Bowl contender. I don't know. So that's my thought on the New York Jets. I feel bad. I feel for the Jets fan base. I do. I feel for everybody who was wanted to see that just in the sheer drama of the NFL unfold with Aaron Rodgers on the Jets. Even me, who's a rival, would kind of have fun with that. But I'm not sure that they were ever what the hype said they were going to be. Now, they got this game Sunday night against Kansas City, and honestly, this Taylor Swift nonsense is getting so out of friggin' hand. I'm with Gio on Boomer and Gio show, and I kind of deep down want the Jets to smack the Chiefs just to shut this Taylor Swift nonsense up. But I want to keep a good space between us and the Jets. So I'm an AFC East rival. What am I going to do? But that's my thought on the Jets. Let's go to the New England Patriots. New England, when I was a kid with Drew Bledsoe, Pete Carroll, all that, they were a pain in the butt as a Dolphins fan, but we were still a good team, constantly and consistently contending for division titles, constantly and consistently contending for the playoff spots. And I watched a lot of devastating playoff runs with Dan Marino, ending and culminating in the most devastating of all when we got our ass smacked by the Jaguars. I mean, everybody's talking about us putting up 70 points on Denver. Well, we got smacked 60 or 63, whatever it was, in a divisional playoff game, which was Dan Marino's last game. Just devastating way to go out. I've had a lot of bad memories. Everybody says they're long-suffering, and I know the Dolphins season overall, have been good and et cetera, but we're long-suffering, too, in a lot of ways, especially if you're my age where you didn't see the 70s. But you lived through the 80s and 90s when they were good, and the early 2000s, but nothing ever came of it. But the Patriots, right? If I was a New England Patriots fan, I have to be honest, of course, and I don't know what it's like, so I can't talk that, but listen, I'm saying it now. If Miami goes on any kind of run at any point in my life where they win multiple Super Bowls, I don't care if it's 2 Super Bowls, I don't care if it's 4 or 5, whatever, and I don't think that's ever going to happen to 4 or 5 in today's league. But if they win multiple Super Bowls for any stretch of my life on this earth, I will go forward content with my Dolphins fandom for the rest of it. Now, 50 years goes by. If I'm so blessed to live that long, I'm sure I'll get frustrated at some point that, I don't have anything to cheer for anymore. But I'll be content. Pats fans, I think you already know. And I'm talking about the real sophisticated Pats fans, because I got to be honest with you. There's a lot of bandwagoners all over the country that are Patriots fans that all they know is winning, all they know is talking trash, and they don't know a whole hell of a lot about football. But I'm talking about the real Pats fans out there. You got to know that A, you had one hell of a run. B, you have a ton of records. C, you had one of the best dynasties in NFL history that will forever be one of the best dynasties, if not the best dynasty in NFL history. One of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in NFL history. And a coach who maybe some of the polish has worn off without Brady, but who, I hate to say it, and I hope he gets pushed out of New England and retires before it happens, but who is on pace, if he coaches 2 or 3 more years, to having the most wins in NFL history, edging Shula. You guys got to see that this dynasty is long past its downward curve. I mean, it's already gone down on a slope, and now it's meandering towards the end and the bottom of that cliff. They're still going to have a semblance of competitiveness. And it almost reminds me of Shula's waning years, except Shula's waning years, he still was going to the playoffs and going to the divisional round of the playoffs. And I don't know if the Pats are even at that caliber the last couple of years or the next coming years. But they're not going to be a layover, run over doormat team. They're never going to be that under Bill Belichick. They're never going to be that with the pride that franchise has. It's not going to happen until it's a completely new era. Hopefully for you guys it doesn't happen, but it's not going to happen under Belichick and Kraft and the way that this team is currently run. But you got to know and you got to see that, I don't think the Pats are going to be the Pats of old until there's another rebuild. The Pats have a pretty good defense. Judon is a beast. They're always going to have that solid defense. Remember, Belichick, and I kind of have a soft spot for the Giants being in this area. Belichick was a defense coordinator of those championship Giants teams. He's always been a good defensive coach. The early Patriots runs in the early 2000s were a lot predicated on defense. They're always going to be solid. They're always going to put up a fight. You're never going to have to be embarrassed. But we all know, I think, with this quarterback, with this aging coach, with the kind of exodus of some of the pinnacles and staples of those teams, you really had two eras if you're a Pats fan, the 00s and then the 2010s. And there were almost two different staples of players there. You had Brewski and them early, and then you had the McCourty, McCourty later. And, you had these staple guys. And, even the wideouts and, everywhere you had, two eras, really. And this new era, I don't see it building up, to another era of that sort under this regime. And I think what's happening, this is just my opinion, is Belichick is riding off into the sunset, and Kraft's going to let him do it to overtake Shula's wins record. Fight hard as hell while he's there, try to pull one out of his hat one last time, but he's going to get the record, and then he's probably going to retire. That's my thought. In 2 years, he's going to retire once he gets the record. And then the Pats, you go into a whole new era. You rebuild from scratch. And where does that go? I don't know. Hopefully, for your sake, you don't wind up in purgatory for 20-plus years like the Dolphins did after Jimmy Johnson left and Marino left. Hopefully you don't. But that remains to be seen. My read on the Pats this year is I think they're going to be right around the Jets, and I think those teams are both 500 type teams. I don't think the Jets are terrible. They're going to have, like I said, bottom five. I don't think the Pats are. I think they're 500 teams. And as the season wears on and it's a war of attrition, and the Pats and the Jets could, the Pats especially could be relevant, in the wild card hunt later in the year. You never know, because if they hang around, they play tough, and the attrition starts with other teams, injuries mount, things happen, we'll see. Wheels come off some teams, we'll see. That's my take on the Pats. Now, since this is Buffalo Bills Dolphins week, let's go to the Bills. The Bills, I've been to the city of Buffalo, Western New York, and I like that city, man. I mean, that city is dope in my opinion. It reminds me of Newark if Newark wasn't surrounded immediately by New York City, right? It's like the same size as Newark. It has its own suburbs around it. And it reminds me a lot of Newark, except it doesn't have New York next door as the big bad brother who takes all the media and everything else away. And the fan base in Buffalo is just extremely loyal. The fan base in Buffalo is dedicated. I love the cold weather stuff. I dig it, man. The team in the 90s was so consistently good. And to have never made it to actually winning the Super Bowl, but making it to so many Super Bowls has got to be heartbreaking. It's got to be more heartbreaking than my run with the Dolphins in the 90s when they were making the playoffs and losing in the divisional round. Now, in the last few years, you have a similar journey to what I had in the 90s with the Dolphins and Marino, where the Bills are consistently very good in the regular season. They consistently have a high seed in the playoffs. They consistently win a couple playoff games, one or two, but they can't even get to the Super Bowl, and it's getting frustrating. Now, here's what I think about the Bills. I think a lot of offseason hype went to the Jets this year. I think a lot of offseason hype went to other teams in the AFC with good quarterbacks. I think the Dolphins were even under the radar a little bit because of this Jets stuff. But people were constantly talking about Tua and how much he's revamping and this and that. Vic Fangio being hired. I think people have what's the word? The Bills have been underrepresented in people's outlook of postseason play this year and predictions. People have underestimated the Bills this year. I think the Bills are still one of the best teams in the league, right? I think Josh Allen's still one of the most athletic, dangerous quarterbacks and playmakers in the league. I think the Bills' defense is still one of the best in the leagues, and the statistics bear that out. The Bills' window is not closed. The Bills are not on a decline. Now, are they the same? The thing with the NFL is you do best when you hit somebody in the mouth by surprise, and when you can smack the whole league in the face by surprise. That's your best 1 or 2 year window to try to win a championship. That's how I see it. Even the Patriots won their second stretch when they were kind of being counted out as has-beens. They didn't win the one in 07 when they were the overwhelming favorite. So it's hard now in year 4, year 3 of the Bills' dominance, I think, to take anybody by surprise, to have an innovative game or innovative way of playing that people can't handle. So it makes the road and the hill harder to climb if you're a Bills fan. But the Bills, in my opinion, are 100% contending for an AFC East title this year. They are 100% contending for a first-round bye. They are 100% contending for a Super Bowl. The question remains, can Josh Allen continue to be that innovative, dangerous playmaker, but not succumb to the turnover problem, not be mistake-prone? And that we've seen 2 games this year where he has been that innovative playmaker and they've been dominant, and 1 game where he's been that absolute meltdown player where the Jets beat him. It's the Jets' only win this year so far. So I think that the Bills this year is going to go down to the wire, and I think there's a couple more years left in the tank for this iteration of the Bills. But that window is right on that plateau. And if I'm a Bills fan, I hope they can go tackle it this year or next year, because it's going to start to get played as time goes on. Especially if players like Diggs get frustrated because they're not getting to that final step. But I think the Bills have a good coach. Bills have good players. The Bills are formidable. They have a great fan base. It's going to be tough for anybody else. It's a shame for that fan base that they've never won a Super Bowl. It is. Now, speaking of the Bills and their run and their contention this year, that brings me to my team, the last team on the AFC East list. Just so I'll throw a little point out there, the only team that has a winning record against every single one of its division opponents, has a winning record all time against the Jets, winning record all time against the Bills, winning record all time against the Pats. The Miami Dolphins. A team that was amazing, traditionally great for years through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Even when they weren't winning Super Bowls, they were getting to Super Bowls. They were getting to Super Bowls with random quarterbacks. They were winning AFC championships. They have 5 AFC championships. Only 2 Super Bowl wins, but 5 appearances, 5 AFC championships. But then they have just not... If you're a Dolphins fan who's in your 20s or your teens, you haven't seen the success that I've seen. And if you're in your early 30s even, you haven't gotten to see some of the greatest moments that I got to see, or maybe some of the most heartbreaking, since they always ended that way. The Miami Dolphins right now are one of the most hyped teams in the league. They are 3-0 through 3 games. They were 3-0 through 3 games last year. We were riding high last year. We're riding high this year. The Miami Dolphins are legitimately, objectively, that team that currently is innovating the game and is smacking the rest of the NFL in the mouth unexpectedly. But that doesn't guarantee success. That doesn't guarantee success. The Rams, it guaranteed success. The Colts with Peyton Manning, it didn't guarantee it, but they got it. But the 98 Vikings, they didn't make it. They didn't even make the Super Bowl, which I still think is one of the biggest travesties. You didn't have a Vikings-Broncos matchup that year. But it doesn't guarantee that we're going to get to where we want to go. And I got to say, at this early juncture of the season, I'm not prepared to say Miami is undoubtedly a Super Bowl contender. At this point, week 4, Miami is a Super Bowl contender at this juncture. They are 100% a Super Bowl contender. Because how are you going to stop that offense? But when it comes to week 10, let's see if that offensive efficiency, if that juggernaut continues. Let's see if we stay healthy. I am curious and excited to see if that can happen. I will say this. This is the most, as an objective fan, as a student of the game, as somebody who writes about the game, I write about the game on the college level, but speaks about the game on this show. This is the first time since the 90s that I actually objectively see the Miami Dolphins as a legitimate championship contender based on the game of football and how they're playing it and how they're coaching it and the chess of football and how it's being played by Mike McDaniel and Vic Fangio. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. Only one team out of 32 gets there, and there are a lot of good teams out there, and some teams haven't hit their stride yet. So I will say this is the beginning of the Miami Dolphins window. And the beginning, as I said, is the best time and best chance to actually reach the promised land. They've got to keep Tua healthy. They've got to continue to innovate because halfway through the season, a little bit past halfway, some defense somewhere is going to figure out how to stop something they're doing, and everybody else is going to copy it. Can they overcome that? They got lucky, I think, with the weather games. Now, Buffalo and the Pats didn't have to come to South Florida in September, which is an advantage for Miami. But on the other hand, Miami doesn't have to go up to New England or Buffalo late in the year. And they only have to go to the Meadowlands on Black Friday by Thanksgiving. It's not that cold. I'll be there. So the schedule helped a little, but they still got a tough road. They got to go play the Chiefs in Europe. They got Dallas. They got to go to Philly. So it remains to be seen what the Dolphins do this year. And to me, my biggest question mark with the Dolphins as of right now, well, there are two things. One, can Tua stay healthy? To me, Tua's got to start playing like Tom Brady played. And Pats fans, you get mad, and I used to make fun of you, and I used to make fun of him, but he was dead right. Tua's got to just fall when he's about to get sacked. If his play's got no chance, he's about to get destroyed, guy just coming unblocked, just fall down. He's got to get the ball out of his hands, and that offensive line has got to be on their game. Now, to this point, that offensive line has been on their game. So step one is Tua staying healthy. Right now, he has been. The running game, we look like we got a stable of backs, and if the blocking continues that good, we have a running game to support him. My second biggest thing behind Tua's health is this defense. Vic Fangio has shown that he knows when to call the right play at pivotal points in the game, but at certain other points in the game, the defense has looked iffy. I'm curious to see how they do against the Bills. And I'm curious to see when it gets late. That's why they say defense wins championships. When it gets late in the season, in the weather, in the cold, after everybody's tired, after the bones are aching, the muscles hurt, defenses are a huge X factor in the playoffs and late in the season. And I'm wondering if our defense is going to be able to shut down some of the more prolific offenses, and if how other defenses do against our prolific offense. I think this defense has a lot of talent, and I think a lot of it also hinges on Jalen Ramsey, because if he comes back and Nick Needham, who is the slot corner, they haven't played all year. If they come back and strengthen our secondary to a considerable extent, which then in turn will help the pass rush, I think that bodes very well for the Dolphins. But if they don't come back, or they don't come back full speed, or other holes, I don't think our linebacking core is the best at all. If teams figure out how to better exploit our linebacking core, and it's going to be something to watch against this huge running quarterback in Josh Allen, who stays on his feet and looks downfield, especially the middle of the field, and is able to find receivers. It's a big test this week. But I think that's a big test for the Miami Dolphins. So the season script is unwritten, but these are the things I'm looking at relative to each team. These are my thoughts on each team going forward. I just hope Tua gets out of Buffalo healthy, because that Matt Milano, I don't care what you say, Buffalo fans, that Matt Milano is a little bit of a dirty player, man. And I'll admit it when we have one. Sue was. He's a little bit of a dirty. I don't trust him not to try to get a hit in. He's one of those subtle hitters. Gets a little subtle hit in there. So we got to watch him and the Bills in general. And the Bills are a tough team. So those are my thoughts on the AFC East, the state of the AFC East right now, if you will. Guys, if you've listened to this whole thing, you've dug it, you've been vibing, you've enjoyed it, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button. Get us to 1,500 subscribers. Also, we do have memberships available on this channel. There are executive membership level. That'll get you, first to speak on the panels every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. That'll get you access to other innovative things where you could tell me where you want to see the channel go. We haven't had our first executives meeting yet. We're going to do that about quarter way through the season, see what executives would like to see more from the channel. But then we have regular Fury Fam members, just baseline Fury Fam memberships. There's hidden videos on this channel, exclusive videos on this channel that you get to see. You get to see my little bit of my view out here in my apartment, and it is worth seeing, trust me. You get to see a little bit of how I live. You get a pilot episode of In the Blender with Shake, which is another great show on this channel. So consider subscribing. It's really appreciated. Consider becoming a member. This is something I do after the daily grind. This is something I do in addition to the daily grind. I don't have the time to sit around all day and just make videos and just talk Dolphins nonstop. I do this because I think the Dolphins and the NFL community and the content creator community needs a little bit more of the vibe and flavor that I'm bringing to it. So if you agree, help me out by hitting subscribe. Help me out by becoming a member. But guys, let's see what happens this Sunday with everybody. Let's see how the season plays out. This is your one-stop shop for all things Dolphins, but also a little bit of expansion into the rest of the AFC East. I hope everybody enjoys their weekend. I hope everybody enjoys their games, unless you're a Bills fan. And I'll see you guys real soon. Fins up, Larry K out.